So I was working in a agency doing kind of brochure websites. So a lot of Joomla and Drupal websites. I did that
Okay,
for about 5 years.
5 years.
Hmm.
Got it. So you had some professional experience, and then you went out on your own, essentially.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. And what type of clients do you generally serve?
So I've worked for mostly engineering firms, doing kind of their internal systems, and with startups doing their MVPs or recovering their MVPs.
Hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah, with that, a lot of it is going to be so the stack I usually work with is kind of a usually going to be a Rails. If it's a recovery one, a lot of times it's kind of picking up whatever was in place beforehand. So I've done stuff with Rails, Django, React Native for mobile things.
Hmm.
So a little bit of variety in that.
Gotcha. So you're working with more smaller startups trying to get their MVPs or reclaim their MVPs,
Hmm.
and then bigger companies who want you to come in and solve specific problems
Exactly.
within their code base, is it?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Nice. And you're primarily, is it your focus primarily back end then, or are you across the whole stack?
So it usually ends up being a pretty full stack. Um,
Hmm.
usually the groups the company I was working for, they're gonna typically I'll either be a solo developer, so I'm kind of responsible for everything from the business requirements all the way to building it out, or working with smaller teams. So those are usually been um, usually around five developers, including myself.
Hmm. Hmm.
And usually that's kind of with that, it's usually me coming in as one of the more senior developers. So it ends up taking on a leadership and setting direction and whatnot.
Mm. Okay. So generally you come in and quickly kind of rise as someone calling the shots
Yeah.
or directing
Yes.
how things should be done.
The It's pretty common for if I am coming into a situation that already has developers. A lot of times it's uh, a lot of times they got the cheapest offshore developers, and they get what they pay for.
Okay.
So there's quite a bit of cleanup and recovery to be done there.
For sure. So yeah, tell me more about that. What sort of problems they run into when they hire offshore developers?
The most common thing I see is that you have a non-technical person in charge who is then directing the technical work, and they don't. What I think happens a lot of times is that they're not really able to assess what they're purchasing. They
Mm,
don't have the technical capability to do it, so um, they'll they'll say, "Hey, we want to add a button," and the offshore team is going to say, "All right, that's 3 weeks work." And it's
hmm
like, no, that should be 3 minutes work.
hmm
But they don't know. And all the technical stuff is magic behind the scenes. Um, they don't have the technical ability to assess the whole situation.
mm,
Um, so I haven't actually come into many situations where they're working well with an offshore team and they just need some additional help and direction. Usually, it's a pretty uh, pretty bad situation.
mm,
That's what I've typically seen. The There's a few exceptions to that, and they've usually been for a bigger company where they're hiring a team that's spaced out geographically for non-monetary reasons. So I worked with ThoughtWorks, and they've got an international team. I've been on meetings where in a single meeting we have people from Canada, the States, Europe, Australia, India, and besides the nightmare that's the time zones for scheduling that meeting, that's gone well because they have a good development team in India. So they're not
hmm
doing it for cost saving reasons necessarily. Whereas most of the time when I've gone into a situation where you have a startup, you have a bootstrap startup where they're trying to pinch their pennies together, and then they hire a team from India or wherever, and they get the cheapest one, and that turns out to not be a very effective way of spending your money.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So you feel like maybe the more established the company, the better they do in this scenario, or the more experienced because they are more focused on the quality and
That's definitely a big part of it.
hmm
Um, I think you're not going to have a hierarchy where you have a non-technical person and then a team. If you're going to have that situation, you're going to have a non-technical person, a technical person, and then a team. So that
mm,
person that kind of has the direct oversight is going to be someone who understands what they're doing and is
hmm
able to evaluate it. Um, I look at kind of on the other side, if you do have a less established, if you have a startup, it's kind of like saying, well, we're trying to build a house and we're going to get the cheapest person to make the foundation. And then once
hmm
we have some money, we'll do everything fantastic above. But then you've got a garbage foundation and the rest of the house is going to crumble. So
yeah, yeah.
it's kind of unfortunate that that's where, like, if you got cheap paint, it's not going to
hmm
destroy your house. But if you got a bad foundation, um,
hmm
it causes a lot of other problems on top of it.
hmm hmm
But no, I think the big part is that a large company is going to be hiring a outsourced team because they need more people, but they're still going to have the leadership um, to help guide and direct them from a technical point of view, um, not just from the business side of things, but they actually have the understanding of connecting the business and the technical together.
hmm The technical lead type person, is
Mm-hmm.
that who they'll have that sort of awareness? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Um, yeah. Because if you go and you have a person who's like purely 100% business, they're going to say, hey, I want X, Y, and Z. And they might give input about how it should happen, but they don't have the technical insight to know like how to make that actually happen.
hmm
And so often, especially when you're getting hourly offshore contract help, they're the thing they care about is billing hours. So
hmm
um, pretty much all of the companies that offshore companies I've worked with, they don't do automated testing because automated testing is going to subtract from their hourly bottom line.
mm
Do you want to, if you have a 10 hours of development and then you have to put 10 hours of testing on top of it, or do you want to do 10 or do you want to bill for 10 hours of development and 30 seconds of testing because
hmm
we hit a script and it does all the testing for all the automated testing.
hmm
So I think that by doing hourly stuff and by not having the technical oversight, I've never had on the business side them ask for automated testing because they
hmm
don't know to ask for it. Um, so then you have a situation where the business owner is not going to ask for automated testing, and the offshore team is not incentivized to be more efficient. So
hmm
then you have situations where you have to do hours and hours of testing just to maintain what you have.
mm
So I think there's a lot of lack of knowledge on the business side about what to ask for
hmm
and lack of incentive on the offshore team to provide what's best for the business.
mm Yeah, that's a good way to sum it up for sure. And do you think it's that the business doesn't know what to ask for from a technical standpoint and to what sort of standards to adhere to essentially, or just overall they don't really know what to ask for?
Yeah, I would say that like the thing is like if you have a non-technical founder, if you're doing a startup,
hmm
unless it's their second, third, fourth startup, they're going to learn those things, and they're hopefully going to have, if they have any success before, then that's going to be something that they'll probably be pretty well incentivized to continue doing moving forward. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of businesses that kind of die on the vine because they just they don't know what to ask for. So they don't know
hmm
to ask for automated testing. And I've got test suites that go through thousands of tests in
hmm
1 minute.
hmm
So even the last project I was working on, the we basically the thing was thrown in the garbage and rewritten, in a fraction of the time. But then I showed the automated test suite, and I had it run through, and then actually had to pop up a browser instead of just happening behind the scenes. And they see dozen browsers pop up, and it's clicking through everything, and they're like, "Oh, we used to do this manually." And we ran through,
Hmm.
I ran through the automated test suite in 30 seconds, and that would have been hours of them validating that it continues to work the way that it did last week, and that the new thing, so they just don't know to ask for that, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, there definitely is a very strong component where it's them just not knowing, and they're supposed to be focusing on how to kickstart the business and do the marketing and talk to people, and the business side of things. So it really, there needs to be, well, this kind of, sorry, let me put my thoughts together. What this really is that in a business, you have the business side of things, you have the technical side of things, and they need to work together. And
Hmm.
with um, when you have a startup, especially, um, they're trying to figure things out on the business side of things. And if you tell them to figure out the business side of things and to figure out the technical things, that's a lot. Um, and I think that a lot of businesses need to have somebody who's able to be the technical founder. And I don't really see, generally speaking, that the offshore teams are filling the technical founder. They're doing technical hands work where, you know, where it's useful and can be done well, but if it's not going in the right direction, then it's not going to be effective for anything.
Hmm. Hmm. Got it. So it sounds like you haven't seen sufficient technical leadership in offshore teams. I mean, I'm sure it exists, but it's not as common. And then there's lots of reasons why, even if there was technical leadership, there isn't an incentive there to. They're not as the incentives aren't as closely as aligned as maybe a founder and a co-founder might be, like a
Exactly.
technical co-founder.
Well, and even if you have a situation where you do have a technical co-founder, that's where I
Hmm.
can see offshore teams working, because the technical co-founder is going to at least know enough that they can see what's coming in. They can have pull requests or code reviews. There's things where they can say this is not up to par, or they're gonna, like, if a non-technical founder asks the development team to do something,
Hmm.
then they're going to typically, I would expect that they're going to assume that the 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 contracting team is going to make recommendations, and they've got the technical expertise, not the non-technical co-founder.
Hmm.
But even looking into the cultural things, like in India, I know that it's a very top-down um, structure for things. So if the non-technical founder is asking the team to do something, they're going to default to be saying yes, even if the
Yeah.
idea is bad, even if the direction is bad, or
Mm,
even if
mm,
even if you could implement it three different ways, and it's suggested to do method A, method B might be absolutely better, but they're not going to contradict, because culturally they don't typically do that as well.
mhm,
So even having that appropriate amount of pushback um, can be a thing. So I think there's monetary incentives where they're not necessarily aligned perfectly. I think there's cultural differences that can lead to um, those types of differences of opinions, or places where there should be pushback, and there isn't necessarily pushback. So there's a
mhm,
lot of different factors that can make that work well or not well. And having a technical co-founder, or a person that's kind of in that technical leadership role, means that um, you can add that to a offshore team um, with someone who does have that responsibilities.
mhm, mhm. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that there's scope to add someone to that team. And I mean, I'm just hearing a lot of talk about the problems and why we what can potentially go wrong with offshore teams and all of the all the potential pitfalls. It sounds like you've basically run into all of them over the years in one way or another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's ones that are still out there, but yeah,
Yeah,
definitely a good handful of them.
yeah, some horror stories. It's great. Uh, so I noticed you have a couple of different content strategies. You have the daily newsletter and or at least seemingly daily. And then it looks like you're also doing some YouTube stuff. And I also came across you on Reddit too. What do you think has been most impactful with regards to getting your getting clients or whatever the goal is with all that stuff? Or is it just to develop kind of a uh reputation or become seen as an authority on certain topics?
Um, you're you're hurting me. This is probably the weakest part of my business.
Really? It
Um,
seems like you're doing, I mean, it seems like you're definitely very consistent and you have
so
some
so that's
followers and
actually
stuff.
what I'm trying to do right now is being more consistent with it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing it for 12 years and I've not been consistent with the marketing and the business development side of things at all. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what I am trying to work on right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate recognition of the consistency, but that's a last 6 months type thing.
Okay.
In terms of getting results, none of my marketing stuff has really jumped out as things that have really delivered much yet. Where I have gotten results is mostly out of referrals and whatnot. So that's actually the
Mm-hmm.
thing where I'm struggling with the business to try and do the putting on the businessman hat and
Mm-hmm.
doing that well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so so I actually don't have great results to speak of in that. I've been fortunate and blessed for the work I do get. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't really, unfortunately, I don't have a secret, a silver bullet to share just yet. Sorry, I do have one. I do have one silver bullet. Be fortunate and lucky.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know how generally useful that is, though.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you're controlling the inputs.
Yeah.
You can't really do anything about the outputs.
Hmm.
You're being
Hmm.
consistent, and I've been impressed by anything I've come across from you. And especially your newsletter, I've skimmed through a bunch of those, and
Thanks.
it's been helpful to me, even though I'm not a Rails guy. I still like the little bite size tips and tricks rather than something that's crazy long and complicated and is going to take about 2 hours to read.
Well, what stack do you work with usually?
I kind of bounce around. I'm the last 5 or 6 years, I've been mostly focused on React apps of various types, some React Native before that as well, getting into the React paradigm. And then I did some Python and Django work at my previous gig as well. And that's translating now into my current role, which is more is
Mhm.
C#.net app, which is very far away from what I'm used to. And I've definitely just thrown myself in at the deep end and I'm kind of clinging on and hoping to go unnoticed that I'm not as experienced as I guess I wanted to I expected to be going in there. I just hoped that I was going to be able to pick it up quicker than I am, but it's been quite challenging, but it's been a great learning curve. It's been a great learning experience to basically get paid to learn, which is a gift, and I'm very grateful that I'm able to
Hmm.
get this experience under my belt. And then yeah, but my main experience is Python, JavaScript, React apps, full stack web dev. And then I've done quite a bit of CI and CD and infrastructure and pipeline stuff over the years because the last place I was at, I was the sole web developer. So I was
Okay.
basically running all of the releases as well and would routinely run into AWS and GitLab issues there. So that forced me to learn how all that stuff works too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got a lot of experience across mostly web stuff though is my primary focus. I've enjoyed staying in the web rather than spinning up simulators and emulators and all that crazy stuff that just blows up
Yep.
my computer. I feel like web is more intuitive and I kind of it's more similar to my personality, which is a little bit chaotic and kind of hacky and likes to just dive into very, very specific things and get clarity on the output and get clarity on what's going on in the app very
Yep.
easily.
There's yeah, there's a lot of points to grab on with that.
Hmm.
But no, even the yeah, kind of getting especially on the mobile native things. Um, it's a little bit of a crazy, because especially with React Native and some of the just like keeping dependencies and projects buildable is
Hmm.
even just a thing by itself. Um, but yeah, the amount of improvements to being able to spin up infrastructure and manage web side of things has improved so much over the last few years. So um, even for so in the Rails ecosystem, there's Hotwire Native, which really lets you. It's kind of it's probably a bad way of putting it. It's kind of like Electron for mobile apps, but it really
Hmm.
fits nicely with the Rails ecosystem,
Mm.
which makes for um, doing browser all the way down to native mobile apps really effective and works well. So um, it's yeah, being web first. I think that's web first is the way people should be defaulting to, unless they have a really good reason not to.
Mm.
Um, Depending on what exactly that is, but with like React Native or Hotwire Native,
Hmm.
it kind of it makes a ton of sense. Short of if you're doing like a AAA 3D video game, well, yeah, that's going to be native, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, for sure. It's definitely more specialized and requires extra equipment and just a lot of extra overhead and
yeah,
complexity just to get something even somewhat visible and to get some feedback. And React Native has done a good job of that, of tightening that feedback loop from what I remember. And it's probably a lot better now, but still, it's still kind of containerized into this separate environment that is not necessarily, it doesn't have a lot of the behaviors. And I've just gotten very comfortable in the browser over the years
yeah,
in all of the different nooks and crannies that things can be hidden. There's a whole other world behind it. And I think it's cool that some people have various degrees of understanding of it as well. A lot of people know how to open the dev tools and everyone thinks they're a genius when they can change the text on a page,
yeah,
which is editing the HTML. And but it's cool that people, even the layman, has some understanding of that. And I have it's easier to sometimes there can be situations where I need to show someone something or I need to try and figure out why something's broken. And it's nice that I just say open the dev tools and lots of people will just know what I mean right off the bat, even if they're in marketing or something, because they've fiddled around in there for one reason or another
yeah.
over the years.
My kids still don't know that that's a thing,
Okay.
so I'll bring up my YouTube profile and show them how many millions of subscribers I have. They're very
Yeah.
impressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't last past a page refresh, but in the meantime, they think I'm pretty amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Well, long may it continue. You can always just change it back. I guess
Hmm.
there might be a way to cache it somehow in the browser, some sort of a variable or a cookie or something.
Need to make a browser extension or something that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just
Boost your YouTube
translates
views.
just mine. Yeah.
Yeah. If YouTube's that easily hackable, got bigger problems.
Well, if it's just front end stuff, I'm pretty sure you could probably do that pretty easily. Um,
Yeah.
I know that they've when the Vision Pro came out for quite a while, there's a YouTube client which was basically just a web browser that brought up YouTube and then injected a bunch of stuff to clean it up for Vision Pro. So I think that like as soon as you're doing, as long as you're doing client side stuff, that's basically like DOM manipulation. You can almost do whatever you want,
Mm,
um, because it's not going to be, it's not affecting the server side. So you're not really hacking the Googles.
right. You're never going to be able to make an API request or
Yeah,
anything. Or if you can only send very specific pieces of data.
yeah,
Cool. So I have a few more questions about the business.
sure.
So it sounds like you generally find clients through referrals.
Hmm. Um, yeah, that's the so my clients usually stick around for quite a few years. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of ongoing work, even kind of going into a lot of times I have a main build, and then I'll go into a maintenance, and then there'll be some feature requests, and then go back to maintenance. Kind of have that type of a rhythm. And then so I've in the last 12 years I've lost probably five clients total. The rest of
Well,
them, um, so some of them I work, do a little bit of stuff once or twice a year. Um, some of them are on kind of a permanent um, maintenance retainer, where they're taking care of small tweaks and um, dependency updates, that kind of stuff. And then probably add one or two clients a year that are new clients. So it's not a large number. So there's not a lot of churn, and there isn't, but there also isn't a large addition of new clients over time. But
mhm.
each one ends up adding up um, and building up. So um, I probably have about 10 clients who could be asking me for anything at a time, and probably four that are active at any time.
Mm, gotcha. 10 clients that are could be asking you for minor bug fixes
Mm-hmm.
or maintenance type stuff,
Yep.
maybe an upgrade or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then four that are more actively like active feature work
Yep.
that keeps you busy throughout your week kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And I've got a I've got a dozen side projects of stuff that I'm
Okay,
working on
yeah,
and
of
stuff
course.
too, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, on the side, I am building a CRM for myself,
Oh, cool.
because might as well just try and disrupt HubSpot all by myself.
Yeah.
So I'm building a CRM by
I,
myself, a budgeting app. Um, my kids are homeschooled, so an app for taking keeping track of their schoolwork and chores, and giving them coins and rewards. That way they can be incentivized, and um, a social media, a religious social media app, so focused on churches, and a learning management system. So
cool.
just a couple side projects.
Just a couple of little things, yeah. Just a
Yeah,
HubSpot disruptor and
yeah, yeah,
Facebook for Christians or
yeah. Um,
churchgoers.
so usually when I'm doing YouTube videos, a lot of times it's going to be adding a feature onto one of those side projects. That way I can kind of share the code, walk through it, go through it, and that's kind of where I kind of spend that free time and use that as kind of a marketing thing.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah,
So that's to try and like demonstrate your experience kind of thing or
yeah,
show what you're working on.
um, yeah, mostly. So
Yeah.
um, I probably should. I probably am doing it a little bit lazy, where I'm just kind of recording, putting it out there, and seeing what happens. I
Hmm.
probably so from the marketing side of things, I am trying to do daily emails. I haven't seen great results from that yet, so I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing there, kind of moving forward. But the other thing I was thinking is probably doing a little bit stronger focus on putting out more regular YouTube videos, and that's going to be probably a little bit more focused. The ones I've done mostly for YouTube are usually kind of going through it as I think through it, as opposed to being a little bit more structured.
Hmm.
I don't think I'm interested really in doing like highly polished, scripted, formal things. So they're still probably going to be more of like a lot less formal, but
Hmm.
that's something I'm considering for the marketing side of things.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's probably a lot more, it's probably maybe 5 or 6 times the work at least to start to do things more polished on YouTube.
Yeah.
It might be worth it. I feel like for people like us, writing text and stuff is a little bit more intuitive.
Hmm.
It's just an extra few keystrokes every day
Yeah.
rather than a
And
whole different ball game with video editing and stuff.
well, the stuff I've done with video has usually been like live stream it. That way there's no editing, and what it is what it is.
Right.
Um, with it, I've the biggest problem I think is that I'll do a 1 hour stream of building out something, and it turns out most people don't have a 1 hour free time or attention span. So
Yeah. I think I've seen it done well when the person is really trying to get it done and do you stream it live as well?
yeah.
Okay, yeah. I've seen it done well, but I think it's all like anything. It's if there's a big enough following going into it, and then there's people that are interested, and then they're creating more excitement during the actual stream and interacting with the
Hmm.
streamer, then I think that's what really makes it. So like leveraging that in existing following, and but I still think probably most people are probably not going to tune in to watch, even if they are following the person. It is kind of hard to, but I think there was a guy, that guy called Peter Levels. He's a pretty big startup guy on Twitter, and he live streamed building one of his apps. I think it was called HUD Maps or something, and I think it was just a lot of people were thought it was a great idea, essentially, and therefore he got a big audience for it, and people were following along with him as he was doing it, all night kind of thing,
Right.
and he spun it up, and I think there's some entertainment value in people seeing something come to life because maybe it's not as clear to people. That's what hooked me with programming in the first place, was just this, especially if you have a fast computer, just how quick the feedback is with, and sometimes it's frustratingly slow, but for front end stuff, once you get a little bit handy, you can get stuff up and running, and you can get some visual feedback within a few minutes, and then it's just tweaking from there.
Yeah.
And I think that could be exciting for people to see, oh, there's something coming to life here, idea to implementation, and then maybe for non-technical founders as well to see, oh, this it's possible. I'm seeing someone doing it right in front of me,
Hmm.
and he started somewhere once too. So maybe it's not. Maybe I can do it myself, or maybe these developers can be going a bit quicker.
Yeah, that's one thing I could see as a non-technical person, um, is seeing what the feedback loop. So with an effective system and where you have good test-driven development practices and a productive framework like Rails gives you. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm only speaking about that because that's what I work with. Seeing that these changes are 10 minutes of work, not a week of work, can be beneficial for a non-technical person, even if they have no idea what's going on. They go from a
Hmm.
blank page to a working thing in half an hour. And even for a developer watching something like that, they can see because this might shock you, but I don't go from A to B. I scribble around and
Yeah, yeah.
hopefully arrive at B. But
Hmm.
there's when they have the highly produced um, things where videos where they've scripted it, like it's great that they can get through it in 5 minutes. But that's 5 minutes after 3 hours of scripting, editing it, practicing it, and then
Hmm.
look, it's 5 minutes of work.
Hmm.
So even just when you're thinking about yourself, when you're working through things, um, what's actually real and what's the polished YouTube version of reality. They're not
Hmm.
necessarily the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think with the developers thing that you're saying, there's definitely I think there's maybe some sort of community or solidarity that could be built there. That Kent Dodds, he's a big JavaScript guy, and this other guy from GitHub whose name escapes me. I think it's Brian something. He live streams as well. He has his little face in the corner, and I think he's just going about his workday. A lot of them are just going about their workday. They're not necessarily even focused on any particular app or anything,
Hmm.
and they're just talking through what they're doing in the moment. So I think, do you talk out loud when you're doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, it's um, I'm out of the place where I can confidently and comfortably speak my mind and do what I'm not very good at multitasking that right now.
yeah, it's hard.
So
Yeah,
it's one of those things where I type and then I speak to the camera and then I type.
yeah,
And the people I do watch who have done live streaming and they're typing away and I can see them doing this. And
yeah,
I can see that they're typing away and they're saying words and the code's coming out on the screen. I'm like, I don't know how you. It's like the people who can tap their head and rub their belly.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
that type of a thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Definitely seems like a very specific skill. But yeah, it's an interesting space. I think maybe with Twitch and everything, there's something there for live streamers. Uh, what would you say? What's your favorite thing about working with your clients and the work you do for them?
The 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 best business thing I think is when someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I have an idea,"
Yeah,
and I can craft that and turn that into a real thing. Um, and either if I'm working by myself, where I build a greenfield thing from scratch and go from an idea to I'm accepting money and fulfilling products or whatever it is. So on the business side of things, that's probably the thing that I enjoy the most of the solving problems and creating stuff. Um, for the personal side of things, I do find it really fulfilling work, so I do enjoy it, and I enjoy that it's a profession where I can make a good amount of money. I can take care of my family, and it's not something where I'm a starving artist where I love what I do, but I make no money.
yeah,
So it's nice that it's something that aligns well with the way I think, what I enjoy, my hobbies. If you ask me what do I do for fun, it's the same thing as I do for work.
yeah,
So
yeah,
um, and like when I have free time and I come up with ideas and I build one of my side projects like a CRM. Why? Because I like it,
yeah,
not because I think I'm gonna. The I like puns. I'm writing my own dad joke book, so my CRM is called Crummy because it's CRMY,
yeah,
um, which if I go and try and market it, I think is probably going to be a problem. I don't see many people wanting to buy crummy CRM. So, or if I do, they're going to be all dad joke enthusiasts.
yeah.
But that's what I do for fun. That's what I enjoy. So I find it rewarding that I can do the thing I like. I can make good money doing it. I can help my clients kind of bring their ideas to life.
Gotcha. So most of your so I know I looked at the pricing on your website. It's great you have that so well laid out, but would you say most of the work you're still doing is still sort of hands work, so to speak?
So yeah, most of it is still going to be hands work. Um, what happens a lot of times is I'll come in with more of the tech leadership, non-hands work, and um, because a lot of times I'm working with startups, they've got a really bad foundation, and it's to the point
Mm-hmm.
where what they have so often is not worth. It's going to be a year of work to make it be good, but 3 months of work to replace it.
Mm,
Um, so that's where so I haven't figured quite what the sales pitch and the right client is for doing more of the consultative tech leadership, no hands position. Um,
mm-hmm.
the people that I've mostly worked with still require a lot of hands work to be able to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my hope with it is that it's something where we can work together, um, get the business to a place where the product and the business are aligned, that they're, all the fires are put out, and then they can look to build out a team. And at that point, I can kind of fall more into the technical co-founder, fractional CTO type of role. So that's my hope.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it grows, because the what I found is that there's an old saying: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's one of those things where a lot of the startups, especially, they need a person to come in quickly and over the next 3 or 6 months get them in a good spot, and then they can um, focus on scaling up a team and growing that way. But it's that they don't want to spend 1 year building out a team and then another year building out a product and evaluating and validating it and stuff. They want to validate it yesterday, and um, so that kind of requires them to take those quicker steps sooner, as opposed to grow slowly over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, it makes sense. Is there, so it, did you just touch on the fact that they're not validating properly, or did I mishear that?
No,
Or
you
they're,
definitely heard that.
yeah,
Um, I think it's the mentality that I think the general mentality that I see is we will make a perfect product and then we will show it to customers. They will love it and buy it.
yeah,
Um,
or
and
investors.
yeah,
Yeah.
and what ends up happening is that they don't make the perfect product, um, and their potential customers don't care, and no one buys it, and then they're
Mm-hmm.
just out everything.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much any time that I've talked to, especially um, startups, when it's a non-technical founder, and they do have something, I always encourage them to, um, like, their problem is not technical. The problem is not development, most likely. Their problem is going to be that no one cares about their product.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never yet seen um, a startup company where they are over marketing and under developing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always been my recommendation that they need to put more emphasis on the marketing, the sales, the validating side of things before development, just because um, I know a handful of things that I've been involved with where they're great from a technical point of view and useless from a marketing point of view, and they
Mm-hmm.
effectively go nowhere.
Right.
Actually, even worse than that are the ones that are a little bit successful, because
Mm, yeah.
they're not successful enough to go this is successful,
Yeah.
and they're not an utter failure, so they're kind of left in this limbo where they just hang on.
Yeah.
um, and where I think you're really dangerous is if you have a product where it's like 60 to 90% profitable,
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, well, we're at 75%. If we try a little bit harder, we'll get to profitable, and then we'll be able to go from there. And then
Mm-hmm.
they sit at 70% for the next 3 years,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and that's just demoralizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that gets back to validating, where yeah, that's rarely that's rarely where people go to think about it. They're I get the impression that they don't want to show anyone something embarrassing,
Mm, yeah.
or that or they're afraid that it's gonna have a bug and blow up, and um, they're gonna look bad, and the person's never gonna come back.
Mm,
Um, so um, I think if you tell people, hey, this is a startup, this is a new product where we launched last week, or we're in beta, or this is the pilot, or insert your preferred excuse here.
hmm.
I think people are pretty accommodating and forgiving, and if you even ask for feedback and input, I think people are pretty willing to do that. Like,
Hmm.
we're not built. I'm not generally building medical software or your banking system where if you have a oopsie,
Yeah,
um, you know, people care in those ones, but
yeah,
less so if it's something else.
right. For sure. Exactly. There's not the consequences are nowhere near as big as people make them
Hmm.
out to be. I think anybody but a developer is much less seasoned to the idea that there's going to be bugs and there's going to be things that are extremely messy even at the best of times. And it's just better to get something more more less, less fully baked and
I think I am losing you.
get that get that just be building something. Yeah, I think the internet went out there, but
I think it's
I
ironic
think
that we
we're
have
back.
our oh,
Either.
are you am I back with you?
Cool. For a second and see if that makes. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I come through.
Awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me just leave my camera off for a few minutes and see if that helps. Yeah, you too. Great. So
All right.
I think maybe that's a cue to start winding down. Uh, I had one other big question around specifically non-technical founders. What would you say are the greatest areas of improvement, or the greatest areas for improvement lie in serving them? If that makes sense.
Are you asking for on the non-technical founder side, or for like the people like me? Um, how can people like me be improving?
Yeah, or yeah, more so like what are they needing? What are their? You mentioned that you often end up in a situation where you're coming in when things are pretty bad and either trying to redo stuff or fix something that's very badly broken or in a bad state. How do you think that could be improved? Is there ways you think that you could get there earlier and intercept that quicker? Or is it that people just don't seem to be interested in contacting you until it's almost too late?
Yeah, like so for from my side of things, what I've learned is that um being being gentle has rarely been in my client's best interest.
Mm,
Um and that um I've gone to a lot of the situations where I'm like, there's one cockroach, but maybe that's the only cockroach. And
hmm.
um, I think it's one of those situations where like we need to be honest with ourselves as a technical person, that if you're seeing one cockroach, there's probably more,
Hmm.
um, and making sure that that's well explained to the client as well, um, and even just being not that you have to be cruel or overly negative, but just being communicating well the reality of the situation. Um, and I know that there can sometimes be there can be um, concern about I'm trying to think what the word would be on this. The concern about them being hurt by the situation where they've spent 2 years kind of digging a pit, and now you're pointing out that they're in a hole.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but the reality is that if they are in a hole, the best thing for them is to realize that they're in a hole and then to get out of it as quickly as possible.
Mm,
Um, so I think a big part of it is to be honest about the situation in your assessment, and being able to properly um, properly assess that. And that comes from experience and running into things. Um, the Man, if I could have it my way, I would talk to every single non-technical startup founder, um, 3 to 6 months before they're like, let's sign a contract with a team in India, and just have them understand the the realities of what they're asking for. That they are, if they are typically looking at an offshore team, that they need to fall into the it's their responsibility to provide the technical leadership. Even if you are working with a team where you have a team of developers and a project manager, um, which is pretty common, you're the project manager on the the team side isn't a technical co-founder, and they
mm-hmm.
aren't a replacement for a technical co-founder.
Mm,
So if you are going to take that route, then you need to be really kind of stepping up the game to understand what they're producing, how they're producing it, why they're producing it. Um, but if you're going to do that, then you almost are now being a technical co-founder. At which point, do you need to have that other team out there? So it's one of those things where you really do need to have that technical business person who's kind of in that leadership. Um, and if you're going to move ahead without that, you're probably asking for trouble, because that's the foundation of your company. It's the foundation of your business, and there's a non-zero chance that everything that's produced is just going to be thrown in the garbage. So
mm,
even having um, even having a fractional person who's in there part time just to be the technical sanity check, can save you months and years and a bucket load of money.
mm-hmm.
Um, I worked with a client who spent they had they had a I actually don't have the exact number from them, but my back of the paper napkin making some assumptions, they had about 100-man-month development project,
Mm-hmm.
um, that was in a pretty bad situation, mostly because they didn't have any technical person on their side, and that ended up being replaced in about 3 months of development.
Mm,
So you can get really deep in that hole
mm-hmm.
pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so um, yeah, even if the person didn't ever work with me, just saying, hey, if every single non-technical founder had a technical, even fractionally available person, they would be
Mm-hmm.
so much better off.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, that's the need I'm trying to fill.
Hmm.
I'll let you know if I crack anything as to how to get people in this position to hire me. Not necessarily to do the work, to be more of a technical advisor
Yeah, well, I think
type of role.
there's a huge need for that. So I don't
Mm,
think that's a I don't think it's a stupid idea at all.
mm.
So you have my blessing and approval if that's what you're looking for.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'll let you know it if I crack anything as to what exactly the perfect sales pitch is to people like this. But you've definitely experienced the downside, so you've got plenty of horror
Well,
stories which can be persuasive to point to. 100-man months versus 3-man months is a massive.
now, in their defense, the 100-month project had a lot more bugs and a lot more fire than mine did. So if that's worth anything, um, yeah. but I think most people are trying to avoid the bugs in the fire. So
Yeah,
yeah,
right. That's generally the rule of thumb.
that's
Cool.
the hope, anyways.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. All right. This is awesome. I really appreciate you running through you taking all this time to explain all this stuff to me. It's been extremely enlightening, and I'm excited to listen back through the recording and get even more out of it. You've got a wealth of information and experience. Is there anyone else you'd recommend I talk to that is either a non-technical founder or someone else doing something similar to what you're doing?
um, There, probably the only person that jumps to my mind right now. Let me grab his. Um, there's Pascal. I think it's Liberty. I can send you the. I've got his Twitter. Yeah, I'll throw that in chat. Um, he's actually another Canadian. He's out of Ottawa, if I remember correctly. Um, but um, but he does the similar type of stuff. Um, so maybe say talk to him. Um, that's probably the first person that just jumps to my mind. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll reach out to him. That sounds great.
Um, so so for yourself, I know you're in the, I believe it was the Jonathan Stark, the Ditcherville, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think you've contacted me on Reddit. So I have your information. So definitely don't be a stranger if anything, any follow up questions come up for you or anything. Um,
Hmm.
Feel free. And just to throw out to the podcast universe, if you go to jbennett.me,
Yep.
um, that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. I'm not usually, I'm working on it. I kind of have a love hate relationship with social media, and in which I love to hate on it. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm not really out there too much in terms of social the social world, but I am there, and I am, like we discussed earlier, trying to be more regular with that.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I forgot to ask you that. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Um, so you just want to share your website? I'm happy to put a link to it in the show
Yep.
notes. And you don't really want me to share your Twitter or YouTube
You
channel or
can
anything?
that's fine. I don't even actually know the last time I posted on Twitter. So if they're following me there, they can go ahead, but it's gonna be pretty quiet.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Crickets.
Hmm.
Cool. All right. Well, have a good rest of your evening and hope you stay
You as
warm up
well.
there. I'm sure it's pretty cold up there
It's
at
actually
this
been
point.
we had a cold spell where it got to like well in Celsius it got down to close to like -15, -20, so it was pretty chilly. I think that's like -30 or something like that Fahrenheit.
Mm,
But we're actually we're right around the freezing point right now, so it's nice and warm for Canada.
nice. Awesome. Not too bad. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your winter and we'll talk soon. Thanks,
All right,
Jonathan.
you take care.
All right. Bye.